Silence is a manga sound effect. It's sheen on the page, sheen in the dictionary, a state where not one sound is heard. You can already read it, but a page cannot play audio, so why does it need a sound effect for no sound? And who decided that? Answer those and every crash, footstep, and heartbeat becomes a word. The answer is physical. Put an explosion in a film and the soundtrack does the work. The blast hits your ears, the picture stays a picture. A manga page has no speakers. Anything a soundtrack would carry has to be drawn into the art instead, which is why Japan's Trade and Industry Ministry, in its guide to manga grammar, says, sheen became necessary to emphasize the complete silence of particular scenes. Which leaves an obvious question. What happens to a drawn sound once the story finally gets speakers? First, look at how that sound reaches the paper. It is drawn by hand, inside the panel, part of the illustration, not typeset off to the side, which is why English editions struggle with it later. Japanese calls this kakimoji, drawn lettering, and artists and editors choose font and size for nuance. Loud sounds and intense emotion get big, bold strokes. Quiet scenes, small, thin ones. The critic Natsume Fusanosuke popularized its scholarly name, onyu, and argued that hand-drawn sound carries information about time and space in the story's flow. So a panel sets its volume in the thickness of the ink. But not every mark in a panel is a word. Picture a panel. A sweat drop by a character's temple, a cross-shaped anger mark on the forehead, and a heavy don across the background. Which of those three are sound? Decide before I answer. The sweat drop and the anger mark are manpu, emotion symbols, a separate convention that visualizes feelings and sensations, and no part of the sound system. Only the don is onyu. Mistake one for the other, and you go hunting for a sound the artist never drew. There is a harder problem underneath. Beginners often do not notice the lettering is language. Because it is composed as part of the illustration, an effect can lean, stretch, curve around a fist, or run down a cliff face, and the eye files it as texture. Go, 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 crawling up a mountain reads as shading rather than a low, ominous rumble. Nothing in the panel marks where the drawing stops and the words start. So learning to read manga starts with seeing the lettering as language. Once you do, the script it is written in starts talking. Manga sound effects are usually written in katakana, the angular syllabary, so they stand out from the rounded hiragana of dialogue. That choice carries a feel. Hiragana reads soft and organic. Katakana reads sharp, hard, mechanical. Take a heartbeat. Which is the louder heart? Doki-doki in katakana or doki-doki in hiragana? Same word both times. The katakana one is the louder, more agitated heart, and it escapes the panel into ordinary prose. Shinzou ga doki-doki shita. My heart was pounding. Before you read a line of dialogue, the artist has set your volume. One stroke sets it higher. It is the chomp, the long vowel mark, and it works like a volume knob. Drag a vowel out, and the sound reads bigger, more intense, longer lasting. Bung is a sharp bang. Ban is that same bang held, a gun going off, a door flung open. So the opening word was never simply silence. Sheen is silence stretched, quiet held long enough that you feel the room. One stroke does that, and it carries into ordinary prose. Heya wa shiin to shiteita. There was quiet in the room. The lettering is a dial, and the artist is turning it. Now flip it. One small mark cuts a sound off instead of holding it open. A small tsu cuts the airflow off, shorter, sharper, more staccato. Zoku-zoku is a shiver running through you. Clip it, and zoku is one cold spike. Now the third lever, and you can hear this one yourself. Same blow, two spellings, doka and dolgol. Which one hits harder? Trust your ear. It is dolgol, and voicing is the reason. A voiceless consonant lands lighter, a voiced one heavier. Swap in the voiced consonant, add a small trailing vowel, and a plain doka becomes a blow with real mass. Bend a word that far, though, and it stops matching anything you can look up. Hold that thought, because there is one more way to scale a sound up. Two blasts land on the page, dong and dokang. One is a heavy thud, the other is a full explosion. Which one is bigger? Say it before the answer arrives. Dokang. But check which control moved. Same script, nothing clipped, nothing voiced. The word grew a beat in the middle, and that beat is the distance between a thud and a blast. Length again, working inside the word instead of at the end. Dokang is common enough to leave the panel. Dynamite ga dokan to bakuhatsu shita. The dynamite went off with a bang. So when near twins show up in a panel, look for what moved. Now the question left open. What happens when the page gets speakers? Animate a manga and the words split by what they name. Anything naming a real noise, an explosion, a slammed door, a heartbeat, tends to become real audio. The sound department just plays it. But a word naming a soundless state has nothing to play, so it moves into the characters' mouths. That is why anime characters say doki doki out loud about their own heart, or niko niko for someone beaming. Tomu wa itsumo niko niko shiteru ne. Tom is always smiling. The page had no speakers, so it drew the sound. The screen has speakers, so the silent words became dialogue. A soundtrack solves that. A translator cannot. The lettering is fused into the artwork, so an English edition has 4 moves, and you can spot all 4 on one shelf. Which of the 4 is the most work? Call it now. Leave it, keep the Japanese untouched, often because pulling it out would damage the panel. Transliterate, respell the kana in Roman letters, so gokun becomes gokun. Gloss, a small English word beside the original, or redraw. Erase the Japanese and letter English back into the illustration, the most labor-intensive option, because the sound is part of the drawing. The usual compromise keeps the original and tucks small English beside it, which leaves the case no publisher can solve. The effect in front of you is not in your dictionary. It is missing because the panel form is bent out of shape, so straighten it before you search. Take zoku. Which mark would you strip off first? Answer, then check. Drop the long vowel mark and any small tsu. Put the doubled form back and zoku becomes zoku-zoku. Bang becomes bang. Shapes a dictionary recognizes. Then use a reading-indexed sound effect database where you search by the first katakana character. One of them carries well over 1,000 entries, with 1,329 tied to specific manga. Sometimes even that fails for an honest reason. Mangaka invent sound effects. An artist writes a form for a noise nobody has written down, and you may never find a resource explaining it. So read the panel instead. Font, size, position, and what is happening in the scene hand you the meaning. A thin nyat curling beside a character's mouth, what is that character about to do? It is a sly grin arriving, and no dictionary was involved. That is how a Japanese reader takes an invented sound. Which brings back the question from the very first panel. Who decided that silence needed a sound effect? Tezuka Osamu said he did. In his own words, writing sheen into scenes where not a single sound is made was, to come clean, something he started himself, and he dated it to a series he began in 1951, Shinsekai Ruru. Take that as his own testimony rather than a settled origin. Other authorities discuss the word without confirming he coined it. But the reason it stuck is not in doubt. A page with no soundtrack needed silence you could see, so somebody drew it, and readers have been hearing it ever since.
Go back to that first panel. An empty room, 3 characters of lettering stretched across it, and nothing happening. That is not decoration. It is a word for a state where not one sound is heard, sized by the artist for exactly how much quiet the scene needs, and drawn by hand because paper cannot make a noise. Manga has been playing you a soundtrack the whole time. It was just waiting for you to read it.